Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Food School Smarter, Stronger, Leaner podcast on a mission to inspire a world where food makes us better. Wow, guys, I have a treat for you. Gut healthy treat to be specific. On today's show, you're gonna hear our fascinating and for sure gut healthy conversation with Emran Meyer. Dr. Meyer is a gastroenterologist, neuroscientist, and distinguished research professor in the departments of medicine, physiology, and psychiatry. Dr. Meyer is one of the pioneers and leading researchers in the role of mind-brain-body interactions in health and chronic disease, in particular in IBS. Dr. Meyer published more than 370 scientific papers and co-edited 3 books. His most recent work has focused on the bidirectional interactions within the brain-gut microbiome axis and its role in digestive and ingestive behaviors, obesity, and chronic inflammatory and functional diseases of the gut. Dr. Meyer has been interviewed on National Public Radio, PBS, and by many national and international media outlets, including the Los Angeles Times, Atlantic magazines, and many others. He has spoken at UCLA TEDx on the mysterious origins of gut feelings in 2015. And his best-selling book, The Mind-Gut Connection, was published in July 2016, has remained a #1 bestseller until now, and has been translated into 12 languages. His new book, The Gut-Immune Connection, will be published in June 2021. Well, guys, without further ado, just enjoy, digest this gut health promoting and delicious for your ears conversation with Dr. Emran Meyer. Dr. Meyer, I'm so excited to welcome you to this episode of Food School Podcast. I read your book, The Mind-Gut Connection, How the Hidden Conversation Within Our Bodies Impacts Our Mood, Our Choices, and Our Overall Health. And since then, I've been dying to interview you and chat with you more about the concept that you introduced in the book. So the mind-gut connection. I'd like to start with one question, if you don't mind. Why do you think are we so, we're not paying enough attention to our gut? And why are we so disrespectful almost to our gut? We talk about heart health, brain health, like bone health, anything but our gut. Why do you think is that?
So first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. And to answer your question, I mean, this has changed, I would say, in the last 12 to 24 months significantly, because there's been a lot of talk about gut health. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but everybody has sort of picked on this topic, gut health, gut microbiome health, and what impact this has on our overall health. It's also obviously closely linked to diet. I would say in the past, I mean, the gut wasn't as sexy as the heart or the liver or the brain particularly, because it was just viewed as a sort of a messy system that breaks down our food like a grinder and then digests it and then keeps the waste material and expels that. So it's not being considered something that people like to talk about in a dinner conversation or in any social setting. And it is remarkable how this has changed in a very short time recently.
We can hear these days more and more about gut microbiome, how it affects this function, this organ, or that organ. Recently, for example, I read this research analysis or data analysis that says that even for COVID-19, it seems that people with compromised gut microbiome, like dysbiosis, seem to have more severe cases and more fatalities in general.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a good scientific reason why the gut health has moved to center stage, because different to our other organs, the only exception may be the brain. There's a lot of things that go on in the gut that are essential for our overall health, including the susceptibility and the severity of COVID-19. So the biggest part of our immune system is in the gut. The gut has its own nervous system, the enteric nervous system, a little brain of the gut. It has the biggest endocrine system in our bodies, and it has the microbiome. And all these four systems interact very closely in the gut. And as it's obvious, the immune system then reaches every part of our body, and it influences immune activation and responses to the body everywhere, including the brain. Same with the endocrine system. The hormones that are secreted by the gut go to different parts of the body, including the brain again, that regulate our appetite. And the nervous system of the gut is something that essentially can run all the gut functions in theory by itself. So it's a very it's a system that has evolved to take care of all the gut functions. So I would say the reason it's not surprising why it has so many, the gut has so many connections to other aspects of our health, because it has these scientific connections, that don't exist, for example, for our kidneys or for our heart or for our muscle. It's really unique. It's unique to the gut.
And what's unique, I guess, about the gut, it seems to be that connection, that link between all of our different systems and between each other, but also to our outer environment. Our gut digestion.
That is really important, and thanks to the gut microbiome science. I mean, this is really moved into center stage. That what we so between the outer environment, our the things that we eat, and the microbes that live around us in the soil, on other people, in the air. What's in between that outer world and our gut and the gut's immune system is really the gut microbiome. So now all of a sudden, we can't just stop at the gut level. We have to say, okay, so what influences the gut microbiome? So that is what we feed it, the plants and all the things that are in plants. And then the question is, how do the plants produce these phytonutrients? Well, they produce it because they are in close interactions with the soil microbiome. And so the health of the soil plays a big role in the health benefits of what we eat. And so it links us directly to major aspects of our environment that are also being discussed today a lot, environmental health, soil health, just the impact, for example, that food production has on climate change, So all of a sudden, with this perspective, we have to look way beyond the gut itself. We have to really take into account that our health is in some ways directly related to, to the health of the planet, really. If you take it all the way.
Yeah, and it's fascinating for me that we people, when we talk, for example, about growing plants and to create the best environment for them, we already kind of understand and use the knowledge that the microbes, the bacteria around those plants in our soils, they affect a lot how the crops develop, for example, right? Biodiversity and everything. And somehow we don't seem to notice similarities for human beings as well, that we have these microbes basically everywhere around and inside our bodies. And we don't seem to make the same connection that those microbes can affect a lot of vital functions of our bodies as well as they do of crops or soils.
Yeah, this is a very good point, a very interesting point. So, I'll be coming out with my second book in early June, and that deals a lot with that aspect. There's a striking similarity that most people are not aware of between the close interactions of microbes in the soil with the root system of plants. You could almost say it's a very similar relationship as the microbes in our gut have with the lining of the gut. Some of the same molecules are being used by these microbes in the soil and in the gut. And so it's a general design principle of nature that was present even before we humans came on the scene, and it seems to be something that there's still a lot of people have not paid attention, not realized the importance of the soil microbiome and the soil health. There still talks about how exciting it is to have to do hydroponics, to grow vegetables and fruits outside of the soil environment in artificial environments. I'm not an expert in this field, but just the idea that you essentially remove the root system of plants completely from the soil and the soil microbiome seems to be a very short-sighted idea that ignores essentially all the benefits that the plants get, from the microbes in the soil, and that then are transmitted to us and to our gut microbes. So I think what we're seeing right now is really some kind of revolution that people are realizing, are paying more attention to these invisible creatures, the microbes that are the most dominant life form on Earth and in the oceans, bigger than all the whales and the big, all the mammals. And as we see during the pandemic, they play a very important role. For example, the gut microbes protecting us against infections by these viruses, and but at the same time, our actions on the environment, just the way industrial agriculture, produces meat, and under the circumstances, and we've seen these viral, outbreaks in these facilities where animals are raised under, very artificial and inhumane circumstances. So what we can't see typically, we haven't really looked at as such important aspects in our health, but I think it's a good time to remember that these microorganisms have been in existence in the world, on the planet, long before we were there, and they have accumulated a lot of knowledge about communicating with each other and the environment, and also, with our systems. So
Mhm.
it's an interesting revolution that's going on, paradigm shift, that all of a sudden we realize that there's other life forms that are as important as we are.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, a revolution, even though, I like to say these days it's not that evenly distributed. An average like human being doesn't really think that much of their microbiome, and they don't think about what they're feeding those microbes. People are aware of things like, oh, I need to take this supplement, or this antioxidant is good for me. But a lot of people don't realize that, for example, some substances or some foods are good or bad for them exactly because they influence our microbiome in a beneficial or non-beneficial way. And, I liked a post somewhere, I think on your Instagram, about antioxidants, for example, that they're beneficial because they first interact with our gut microbiome, and then our gut microbiome produces those beneficial compounds for our gut and our whole body.
Yeah, this is a this is a very good example. That as you probably know, all the marketing of these molecules, these plant-based molecules, under the name of polyphenols, and that they have under the name of antioxidants, and that they have these, that it's important to protect against cancer. Well, these molecules are antioxidants if you put them into a test tube with isolated cells, but they're such large molecules that when you ingest them, they cannot be absorbed by our small intestine. So they're really targeted at our gut microbiome. So there's another example of this is another kind of general design principle of nature, how nature has acknowledged the importance of the microbial system. So breast milk, the molecules, the molecules in breast milk called HMOs, human milk oligosaccharides, that are also very large molecules, and they are not absorbed. They cannot be absorbed by the baby's intestine. So they're targeted specifically at the microbiome, at the evolving microbiome of the infant, and they're crucial in the development of the microbial system of the infant. So that's another example, just like the polyphenols were. We've always believed this is something like the breast milk is only there for providing nutrients to the host, to the baby, through direct absorption from the small intestine. And we still believe, if you look at all the commercials and marketing strategies for antioxidants, that these molecules do something when they're absorbed in our small intestine. But in reality, they're targeted at the microbiome, and they have major effects, partially incompletely understood. We don't. That's a science that is still growing. So, for example, let's give you one example of how complex the system is. There's thousands of these polyphenol molecules in plants, and an estimated like 8,000 known compounds. And these compounds, they all go down to the microbes in the large intestine. And the microbes there break them down into hundreds, possibly thousands of smaller molecules. So you can imagine the total number of molecules, different types of molecules that end up in our large intestine that are being absorbed there is phenomenal, in the hundreds of thousands. So you have this pharmacy, nature's pharmacy, that we don't understand really. Now we throw in supplements, one type or the other, but we don't really understand how this really works in reality to maintain gut health, microbial health, and in our own health. So that's a really good example, I think.
What sometimes really I don't know, not it makes me a little bit, drives me a little bit crazy when people compare, well, people say things like, we don't need fibers, or we don't need this or that, or for example, fructose in, I don't know, sugar beverages is the same as fructose in fruit, meaning that people so disregard this factor of gut microbiome that they believe that the same compounds, whether in a whole food form or isolated, create the exact same effect on a human being. It doesn't matter what form they're in.
This is another very good point, and I think there have been some studies. So for a while there was this sort of excitement about juicing. How healthy it is to cleanse your body. We actually, in our family, we bought one of these juicers where you essentially take away the fiber. So you put in carrots and you separate the fiber of the carrots from the juice, and the juice is obviously, carrot juice or any other juice is delicious. It's delicious because it's so sweet and it's all the sugar that's in, but you have removed it from its natural matrix, which is this fiber dense matrix, which has a major effect on the absorption and on the processing of fruits. So I think fortunately we have sort of come around. I think most people have realized that now, even though I still see reports and promotions of body cleansing with juices, but this misunderstanding about the importance of fiber. So if you take, let's say take carrot juice or like blueberry juice. Mm-hmm. So blueberries are very healthy. Some of the richest, have some of the highest concentrations of these polyphenol molecules. There's also a lot of fiber in blueberries. So if you eat a whole blueberry, a big portion of the benefit of that blueberry goes down to your microbes. If you drink it as blueberry juice, you extract the portion that's absorbed by our small intestine that goes directly into our bloodstream, including the sugar, and you essentially throw away all the microbial beneficial components. And we've been doing this with a lot of our foods. I mean, we've been doing this with flour, where we throw away the fiber or take out the fiber. We do it with rice, with white rice. If you look at it, most of our foods, we've sort of lived for the last, I don't know, at least 75 years, with the concept that we go after taste, which is some things taste better if you remove the fiber. And we go after appearance. It has to be white, clean. But we completely ignore, what the health benefits are of many foods. So, this is something I think, people are slowly realizing, and it's not done with supplements. It's done, I think you have to sort of look at food in a very different way. You have to look at it in a holistic way that appreciates the phenomenal intelligence of evolution that has gone in the design of all the food components and the mixture of them, and some systems like the traditional Chinese medicine, that considers food as a medicine really, or some other Asian traditional cuisines, so they understand this, so they appreciate this a lot more, that food and the components of food are medicinal compounds. And we in the West have pretty much abandoned that concept. That used to be, there was some of that present in Europe. Certainly when I grew up, there was more appreciation of some of these health benefits of natural foods. But with industrial agriculture and big food production, that wisdom has pretty much been thrown out the window. And so I think we're just coming back to that now, to realize that and to appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think appreciating the complexity and not trying to instead simplify and refine everything. Let's maybe switch gears a little bit more towards what's your specialization or I guess expertise in, at least from this book, The Mind-Gut Connection. In this book, you talk a lot about the connection between our gut and how our gut microbiome influences our decisions, how it changes our emotions, how it changes our mental state. Could you please elaborate a little bit more on that? Like, how does it happen? How does our gut microbiome influences all of this? Seems to be higher functions that we don't necessarily associate with our gut, like our thoughts or emotions or state of depression or joy or happiness.
Yeah, so let me sort of distinguish two components. One is this whole concept of gut-based decision making, which is one entity, and the other one is this direct effect of the gut and its microbial products on brain function and brain structure. So let me start with the second one first. So the brain-gut microbiome axis is clearly something that has been established now in animal models, and there's some studies, not a whole lot. It's very difficult to actually show this in humans. There's some studies in humans that this connection exists and plays an important role in humans as well. And it's essentially based on the fact that, microbes produce hundreds, thousands of metabolites from the food that we eat, including the fiber that they break down, the polyphenols that they break down that we talked about, and that many of these molecules that the microbes generate are either act on nerve fibers in the gut of the vagus nerve, so this big communication pathway between the gut and the brain. And another group of molecules act on the immune system of the gut, and then the immune system, the activated immune system can spread from the gut through the systemic circulation to the brain. And the third one is that, many gut microbes produce what we call neuroactive molecules that have demonstrated effects on nerve cells that can pass the blood-brain barrier, and that, can directly influence the brain. So there's like three ways, at least three ways by which the microbes in the gut, in response to what we feed them, can influence the brain. And probably those three happen at the same time. So if you're on an unhealthy diet and don't produce, for example, enough of these anti-inflammatory molecules like the short-chain fatty acids, butyrate, then there's an increased engagement of the immune system in the gut. It may be subtle. It's not an inflammation. It's just, it engages immune cells. And then if this is chronic, there's a chronic influence of that that low-grade immune activation on the brain, on the immune system within the brain. And it's, currently thought that this may play an important role in neuroinflammation and neurodegeneration, which play a big role in some forms of depression, definitely in cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease, and other brain functions. So that's something I think a lot of research is focusing on, this just generalized immune activation that can affect many organs in the body, but also, has been shown can affect brain function and also brain structure.
Yeah, I've always been really sensitive to foods in a sense that I noticed a long time ago that if I eat, certain foods, I feel more positive, more proactive. I don't have as many self-doubt. And at some point I thought, that was just in my head, that I was imagining that. But as I was reading your book, I started to understand that it probably wasn't just in my head. It actually changed my personality once I changed my diet. So now, for example, what I eat now is so much different than what I ate 10 years ago. And I can see how my personality is completely different from what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, there's definitely multiple effects. If you switch your diet to a healthy diet, there's multiple things that happen, including, what we often call the placebo effect. You feel better if you pay more attention to your health and to your diet. And it's a very powerful effect, that I think we often badmouth in science, but it's something that the brain can do. It switches its salient system about things that we do, the assessment in a positive way. But the other one is, as I said, there's these hundreds, possibly thousands of neuroactive molecules, that are being generated that we know. If you just look at one example, it's the whole tryptophan metabolism. So tryptophan, essential amino acid, that is, to a large degree absorbed in the small intestine. But the microbes can do a lot of things with tryptophan. They can influence the conversion of tryptophan into serotonin, and most of that serotonin synthesis and storage occurs in the gut in specialized cells. They also, and we know the importance of serotonin about well-being and overall positive influences on our brain and our emotion and our vital functions. The microbes can also convert tryptophan into another metabolite called kynurenine, which is which has a lot of negative effects on our brain. It can go through the blood-brain barrier and affect neuroinflammation, neurodegeneration, and the microbes play a role of how much what the balance between serotonin or between tryptophan and kynurenine is. So depending on how you nurture your microbes, you have different set of microbes in your gut that process certain foods like tryptophan in different ways. You can do it in a positive way, that you produce more serotonin, or in a negative way, produce more of the the kynurenine, or another one is called indoles. And that's a very important thing. So microbes are not the basic design of your microbial architecture is fairly stable. You develop this in the first 3 years. But then you have a big influence on the fine-tuning of that system and the relative amounts of different bacteria and how they interact with your diet. And those differences have a big influence on a variety of things. So microbes play a big role in, for example, in metabolizing estrogen. So estrogen, sex hormone, secreted through the bile into your small intestine, and then microbes act on this on these estrogen metabolites in the gut and make some of them reabsorbable. So the amount of estrogen, for example, that is being absorbed in the gut is influenced depending on what microbes you have, and that again is influenced on what you feed your microbes. The same thing is true about about other hormones that go through this cycle from our systemic circulation through the bile to the gut. microbes act on it, and then it's being reabsorbed. So it's almost like, if the way you have to describe it, your physiology, including many vital functions like the serotonin system and the sex hormone system, many other examples as well, are influenced by the populations of microbes that you have. And those populations, again, are influenced by what you feed them. So if you feed them a healthy diet, you will shift the whole system in a direction that is likely the reason why you feel better on the diet you're on. And many people report this, so.
Yeah, now, every time I'm about to have a meal, I'm trying to design it around my gut microbiome. So, a lot of fibers, a lot of different polyphenols and different plant compounds, and then also like fatty acids that are proven to be beneficial to our gut, like omega-3 fatty acids in fish, or for example, coconut oil for antibacterial, antimicrobial properties. And the more I do it, the better I seem to feel on all of the levels, and it doesn't matter that much, like how much fat in that diet, how many carbs in that diet. It just, the more I kind of designed for my gut microbiome, from what I know, what is beneficial for it, the better I seem to feel on all levels.
Yeah, and this is a very good strategy. I have to say, this is one of the main topics in my new book, which is called the Gut Immune Connection. And that if we just focus on providing the optimal diet for our microbes, you don't really have to worry about, do you get enough protein? Do you have to increase or decrease your fat intake or your complex carbohydrate intake? The key thing is, if you strictly focus on what we now know are the things that foster or promote gut microbial health, you'll do the best thing for your gut health and for your body automatically. So with our society is so obsessed through marketing and through all the people that are in the fitness space. We're obsessed to get enough protein, which is often quoted as being insufficient when you're on a plant-based diet, which is completely, not supported by science. And we're so obsessed about, for example, some people about the whole keto diet. So in essence, the keto diet, is a microbiome starvation diet that, unless you're in a unique variant of that diet that's plant-based keto, but this whole discussion that, these benefits of a keto diet for your health is in some ways completely against current evidence in terms of the microbiome science. Because you take out, you maximize the things that are have no nutrient value for the microbes, like animal fats and meat, and you minimize the intake of complex carbohydrates, which is fiber and polyphenols and plant-based things. So it's it's a very simple recommendation, but I think it addresses almost all the aspects that we've been talking about so far. Focus on the health of your microbiome, and the rest will happen by itself.
Plus, from at least what I've read, I've researched, it seems that also people who live the longest in different parts of the world, what they call blue zones, there is one very, common thing around all of them is that they eat a lot of foods rich in fibers and polyphenols. Like their diet might be different in so many other ways, but that seems to be a common thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, just take one of these examples, the Okinawan diet, which is very high in fiber, low in fat, but regular intake of seafood, which isn't important. So you mentioned before, the omega-3 component is important, both from plant-based food, but also from certain fish. So
from all of your research on gut microbiome and mental health and physical health, from all the evidence you work with patients, what advice would you give to people when it comes to gut healthy diet and gut healthy practices? Like, what can one do on a daily basis to maximize gut health and all the benefits that we are deriving from our gut and gut microbiome?
Yeah, so it's based essentially on the concept of the gut microbiome system, that there's this very close interaction between these three elements. And therefore, we have three ways of influencing each component. So, and that is diet, number one. And always emphasize largely plant-based, so it doesn't have to be vegan or vegetarian, unless you have ethical concerns, which a lot of people have, and you don't want to touch any animal products. But from a pure, health or microbiome standpoint, the largely plant-based diet with a small amount of animal products coming primarily from fish and poultry is definitely the best way to influence that part. From the brain side, negative emotions and stress, particularly chronic stress, have an influence through this brain gut microbiome system on the microbes and on gut health. So that's component number two, very important, to practice a mindful attitude, minimize negative emotions, change your responsiveness to stress. So we can't change the stresses of the world we live in. Obviously, they seem to be increasing constantly, but we can change the way we respond to them, and that determines how much the brain sends signals to the gut microbiome. And then the third thing, which is also interesting, that our physical exercise also has an influence on microbial composition and relative abundances. So three things, three lifestyle recommendations: diet, mindfulness, peace of mind, and regular physical exercise are the three things that anybody can do. If you do these three things, my statement would be that you don't need any supplements, because you will generate all the necessary things for optimal health yourself from these different influences.
It's great advice, and I 100% believe in that too. Dr. Meyer, do you have any of your favorite foods for gut health, and then also maybe favorite stress management techniques, favorite kind of exercise? So in each of these strategies, do you have your, favorites, a couple of things that you do consume more regularly than others?
Yeah, so let me start backwards. So in terms of physical exercise, it doesn't really matter what you do. The evidence supports the importance of regularity and moderate exercise as being the most beneficial for your gut microbial health. So that could be anything from vigorous walking to running, treadmill or whatever, for at least half an hour every day. So the regularity is a key thing, because that influences how the brain responds to it and then sends signals down to the gut. The second thing in terms of the mind, there's obviously now many possibilities for teaching and practicing mindfulness. There's apps, there's groups, there's online programs. that could also include things like yoga and other meditative practices. It depends on what appeals to people the most. I mean, obviously, there's a tremendous increase in the popularity of yoga and mindfulness-based stress reduction recently, and they can easily be accessed even now during the pandemic online. And in terms of diet, I think the main recommendations are you want to maximize the variety of plant-based foods that you eat. So if you just if you decided you become a vegetarian and you just eat tomatoes, that won't do anything good for your microbes. If anything, you will have a very negative effect, because you want to provide as many different fibers and polyphenols, which engages as many strains and species of microbes that are required to break them down. So you want to vary your salad, you want to vary your the vegetables that you serve with your food. You can, there's nothing bad about carbohydrates. I mean, this whole anti-carbohydrate movement that has started, it's the processed carbohydrates that are bad, basically the easily digestible and absorbable sugars. But complex carbohydrates, as they are in wild rice, for example, or in sweet potatoes, or there's now a whole range of vegetable-based pasta dishes, so lentil-based or edamame-based spaghetti, which taste delicious and are food for your microbes. So it's not. So many of the foods that are, I think you have to be very selective and always think about it. What does it do for the microbes? If you love pasta, the regular pasta that you buy in the store is likely not to be the best for your microbes. But if you go to any of these plant-based pasta varieties, you will directly feed them. In terms of fruits, again, variety is on the top of the priority list. So you don't want to eat the same fruit, even though some, have the highest polyphenol contents, like berries, blackberries, blueberries. And so you want to, if they're seasonal, I also recommend, stick with the seasons, which is an important thing, which we know from studies in people, that there are seasonal variations of the microbiome in people that have seasonally dependent dietary habits. And that's also a thing that we should try. So don't get your blueberries in wintertime that come in from thousands of miles away. Focus on, the kinds of fruits and vegetables that are available, during the time it doesn't. So I would say regularity and variety, and variety on a regular basis and in a sort of an rhythmic pattern are things that we all know are good for a complex system like the microbiome system.
Yeah, thank you for this advice. I think it's quite simple, and once people start focusing on these three aspects consistently and regularly, they will see a lot of benefits in all aspects of their physical and mental health. So, Dr. Myers, thank you again for this podcast, and thank you again for the book, The Mind-Gut Connection. It's really transformed a lot of my thinking around gut microbiome and how it influences basically every aspect of our life and of our body and our mind. And I'm so looking forward to the next book, The Mind Immunity Asset Connection or Immune System.
The gut immune connection.
The gut immune connection, yeah. So looking forward to that too.
Yeah, thanks very much, Angela, for having me on this podcast. And for anybody who wants, to have updates via the various social media channels, go to my website, emronmeyer.com. Sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get a regular supply of information on this topic. It's obviously it's a rapidly evolving science. I think we know the basic things that we have to do, but we still don't know a lot of the details. We have to fill in a lot of the details, and so I'm trying to provide that information through my, website and social media channels.
Yeah, thank you for your work. And is there anything else you'd like to add? Anywhere else you'd like people to go, or any advice you'd like to leave our listeners with?
No, this, as I said, there's obviously now several organizations that promote, a largely plant-based diet. The Organization for Responsible Physicians, or the Committee for Responsible Physicians, for example, has a great website about the benefits. But I think what we provide in terms of both the science and the practical advice on the website and associate social media channels is pretty unique.
Mm-hmm. I actually thought about the last question I want to ask you. There are so many these days, so many plant-based food alternatives, basically meat substitutions made with so many ingredients and changed and processed in so many ways. So I always wanted to ask someone, who is more into gut microbiome research, like, what do you think about those foods, those, Impossible Burgers or similar foods? Are they good for our gut microbiome, better than, let's say, good quality animal products? Or what do you think about them?
Well, all these products are good for the environment. They definitely will decrease our demand for beef, which translates into deforestation and monocultures of foods to feed the cows, and so which play meat consumption plays a big role in climate change. So it's good for that because it will decrease the consumption of red meat. From a human health perspective, I think I sort of agree with your skepticism that I heard between the lines. These are all ultra-processed foods. So the kind of foods that we in general discourage completely to consume. I don't know what goes in. Obviously, very complex processes. I mean, these products taste like the real thing. I've tried some of them. And they've become very popular because people want to eat the cake and have it too, so to speak. Yeah. They don't want to give up anything. It's the same thing with sugar substitutes or artificial sweeteners. They want to have the sweet, but they eat something chemical that is not good for your microbes and for your gut health. I personally think I sort of look at it in two ways. It's from an environmental standpoint, I think it's a good thing that this is happening and that they're so popular. But I think people should realize it's an illusion that they're doing something good for their own health. That's a complete misconception, and so they are better than the excessive meat consumption that our society, and other Western countries practice. I've seen this. It's kind of amazing, really. Like in a country like Brazil, that mm-hmm. is. I've recently read an article on this, how much the popularities of these meat alternatives have become, and how they've changed the consumption of meat products. But that's definitely not something I think that will help the health of the Brazilians. It may help the deforestation of the Amazon at some point, but it's not going to do anything positive for them.
Yeah, for me, I think if you choose between, let's say, a burger in a fast food chain made from meat and the same burger made with this plant-based alternative, I would choose plant-based alternative, right? But if we choose between that plant-based substitute and whole foods like vegetables and beans and legumes in their original form, there is no comparison.
Yeah, and then maybe they play these meat substitutes play a role as a transition for meat eaters, that they all of a sudden say, "Wow, now I don't consume red meat anymore. Maybe I should try some real plant-based food, that have the same amount of protein and can be made delicious." So that's one possibility that could happen, that this facilitates a slow transition to a largely plant-based diet of people.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, just, the last question that I always wanted to ask. So thank you for answering, for giving your opinion on that. And again, thank you for being a guest on this podcast, Dr. Meyer. Thank you for your book and all your work. And I'm looking forward to your next book and your work that's upcoming.
Thanks, Angela. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.